Welcome to TechNow, the podcast for ServiceNow system administrators and developers. I am Chuck Tomasi, platform architect with ServiceNow. We'll do full introductions in a little bit. And joining me at the virtual roundtable is, of course...
I'm Dave Slusher, developer evangelist.
I love it. Just leave it there hanging out for you guys. See what happens.
Right.
Like throw $1 on the floor, see who goes for it.
Our southern politeness is keeping each of us from wanting to go first. I'm Dave Slusher. I'm developer evangelist with the platform business unit.
And I'm Kreg Stepp, a senior curriculum developer at ServiceNow and Education Services.
And we have some... Good news, everyone! Istanbul is out. Istanbul is available to the public.
Release the bulls. Release the bulls.
No, not the Istanbuls. The stampede of bulls.
Yeah,
Craig is still in Pamplona doing the running of the bulls.
That's right. Man, it was scary.
I am going to get us right into the slide deck because we have a load of content to cover this morning.
Right.
This is exciting. This is kind of like our Super Bowl. Yeah, well, twice a year Super Bowl, or if you prefer the World Cup. But this is our release of software that we are very excited to talk about. This is probably my favorite time of the year when new software comes out.
It's like Christmas all over again.
It is. Get that slide sharing up there. Oh, I forgot to lock the screen. Don't do that again. Every time. All right. Now we have screen locked. I'll verify that when my little monitor comes up. Looks good. Okay, we did our introductions. That's who we are, and this is what we're talking about. A quick introduction. If you haven't watched a TechNow or met me in person or some other way, I am Chuck Tomasi, as I mentioned, platform architect at ServiceNow, working with the Solution Consulting Group. I've got, I think it's closer to 35 years. I'm going to have to update this slide. Oh, the time flies so fast.
I know.
35 years of IT experience. I was a customer before coming to ServiceNow on the golden ticket that was the first Innovation of the Year award at Knowledge 10. I've been doing this. We now have an anniversary, gentlemen. We've been doing TechNow for 4 years. You guys came on board a year ago. Congratulations.
Yeah.
It almost fizzled out, but thank you for keeping the fire burning and motivating me and going both ways to keep doing this. Thank you very much. That's just a short intro to me. If you want to know more, come shake my hand at Knowledge 17 that we'll be talking about in a bit.
And this is a picture of me.
During happier times.
During happier times. That's right. No, so yeah, I'm the senior curriculum developer. I'm coming up on 3 years, and I was not a customer beforehand, and like a lot of other employees, or like Chuck, and so I had no idea what I was getting into, and because Chuck wouldn't shut up about me coming over to ServiceNow, so I did it, and it was well worth it. It was it's been a fun experience, and obviously a big learning one too. So I've had a big Linux experience in the past, a lot of programming, web development, you name it. So anyway, here I am. I'm in orchestration. I was in orchestration. Now I'm a curriculum developer in education services.
And I'm Dave Slusher. I'm a developer evangelist. As I said, platform business unit. Developer.servicenow.com, where Josh Neary, my partner, and I develop a lot of content. We put out sample apps, and there's training and all kinds of resources, personal developer instances at the developer portal. I have 20 years experience as a software developer. Most of the time, the work that I had done would have been like what would be the core development of the application server here. So this is actually kind of a different kind of career path for me. I've been with ServiceNow for just over 3 years. I've been a developer evangelist for just over a year. As we said, been here for about a year doing the show, which is kind of very much in my core mission, right? This is the kind of stuff we do. It's create content to the world to both inspire and educate. So there you go.
And allow the customer to gain value from the platform. If you've already made the investment in ITSM or ITOM or something like that, we're here to help you explore the possible, understand what's available, and get more value out of that. So another way to do that is to go to our Knowledge Conference, which this year is in Orlando. It's kind of hard to read on this slide, but it is May 7th through 12th, 2017 at the OC Convention Center in Orlando. You can find out more information at knowledge.servicenow.com. This is the big conference of the year. There are, I believe we're targeting 15,000 attendees this year, and we usually overshoot the target by a little bit when we're lucky.
Yeah,
So, hope to see you there.
5,001.
Don't let the crowd scare you away. That is more networking opportunity. That is more learning and education. That is more. And this year, the CreatorCon content is not going on the back end of the knowledge content. It is going to be weaved throughout. That is going to be our developer and administrator tracks. So if you are there in that role, we encourage you to watch for that. There's just going to be more CreatorCon content.
I'm looking forward to it in Florida. I'm going to change a venue.
I'll be there next week for our sales kickoff. I'll let you know how it is.
Yeah, scope it out and let us know how it is.
It's not within driving distance for me this year, so that's a downside for me. I rather enjoyed our drive up there together, Kreg, and we can take buckets and buckets of audio video equipment, which we're going to have to figure out if we're doing a live show and how. That machine will start getting going in a couple of weeks.
See, Chuck, I've even got a CD for the road trip, so we're going to figure it out.
We're not a road trip. You're not flying to drive back to Florida. That wouldn't make any sense.
No.
All right. We have a community quick tip for you today, and I wanted to go through this rather quickly because we do have a lot of information to cover. My community quick tip is about a few methods in the glide record class that I had never noticed before. Maybe some of you have, and congratulations if you like reading documentation pages. But the glide record methods to me are kind of like Beatles songs. It's been, 50 years? 40 years? More than 40 years since the Beatles released a song, but I still, every once in a while, hear a new one. And that's kind of like how the glide record methods are. It's like, what? How? No, that's been around forever, Chuck. You just never encountered it. That's the way it is with these methods. You could see in here on line 7, get location. There's also a set location down on 17. Those are complementary to each other. There's also a restore location on 13 and a save location, which are complementary to each other. And the general idea is while you are working in your glide record, this acts as a row counter or a row pointer to whichever row your query is turning up. So in my example, I'm getting all the active incidents, ordering them by number. I'm going to copy that and show you what it does. When we get to line 10, it saves the location. And then I use a restore location to move the pointer back there and say, hey, what's the number here? And you would expect it to be the number that's at line 10, but there's a trick question in here. Then I will randomly move it back to row 5 and say, what number is that? So let me get to, got to go back to there.
So the save location is kind of like on a calculator where you're sticking it in the memory and recalling it later.
That's a good way to think of it. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So let me pop that in. And apparently I have a scoping issue.
Oops.
Oh, you know why? This is a feature of Istanbul we haven't talked about on this show yet. Let me reduce the font and you'll get the idea. Okay, see I have the application picker up here? And it's currently set for the Connie application. That's for my demo later. Well, it now defaults script's background scope to whatever the application picker says.
Nice.
Okay, so apparently I can't do something in my scope that I could have out of the scope. So let's change that to global. I do want to stay on Connie because I am going to pull that up later. And I need to edit something. Okay, let me increase that. Go to the font. Pray to the font gods, make a sacrifice. And here we go. Row 0 is incident 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Remember I said if it's 10, save the location. That was record 39. Then it goes all the way down through row 23 and says, now restore the location. Restore should have gone back to row 10, but instead it does not. It goes to row 40. Row 11, which has record number 40. What's up with that? And then I randomly set it back to row 5, which if you look up there, row 5 is in fact number 25. Highlight that for you real fast so you can get your eyeballs up there. But this is a bit of a, I don't know if it's an internal off by one bug or what's going on, because, see if I can get back to my editor. Nope, it was the other way. Sorry. Gotta switch screens easier this way. And you say, well, maybe it's because of this next. Okay, if I take restore location, it should move the pointer to row 10, and then you're saying, well, Chuck, it's this next thing. You went to 11. If I take that out, watch what happens. If I can get back here fast enough. Oh, come on, back arrow.
Right click and do back. There you go.
Yeah. Sometimes command arrow isn't happy with me. If I take the next out and not move that pointer up one record, there's a reason I put it there. Not just for my good looks.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
Sure.
Now it says 10,012, which is the last record. So without the next, restore location doesn't really have any reference. And I would figure out what the correlation is between that. I am still doing some experimentation, but thought it'd be interesting if you had a use case where you wanted to perhaps save record locations instead of saving sysids or arrays of objects or something. You can pass this array of positions. I don't have a real handy dandy use case off the top of my head for doing that, but thought I'd mention that. I thought it was fascinating. It's one of those methods that just was cool. Like, hey, there's a whole bunch of these related things I've never seen before. So that's our quick tip for today. Let us move on to the Istanbul platform features. As always, we have a bit.ly link, ServiceNow-TechNow, that brings you to the complete comprehensive list of every episode we've done for the last 4 years. That's just fun to say now. Sounds like we're getting
now.
And
hey, there's a lot of nows in that short link.
There is. It should be bit-now. bit.now. And you can find us there. Our internet meme this time is, yes, debugging and test is easy in Istanbul, and Dave has the honor of doing a demonstration and discussion around those, but there's lots more to talk about. I will start out with some APIs and whatnot and search synonyms and talking about the new condition builder options you can do, including some mobile refresh that's been done. People have been asking for since it came out many releases ago. Hey, can we do this? Hey, can we do that? We now have the option to do some of those. And Kreg is going to get into some API analytics, REST message logging, the email notification layouts, which will make your email beautiful, the ability to put in an unsubscribe link, the email API, which goes through our REST API. And then Dave is our closer with automated test framework. That is not alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, as you might think on this show.
That's right.
Some changes to Studio. And of course, our wonderful new debugger is back that we're going to help out with. And you're not going to want to miss that. So stick around and watch the whole thing. Right now, I'm going to start it out. Can't tell how many viewers we've got. I got to look at my other screen, but that would disrupt the flow. So I'm not going to do that. We have a number of APIs for glide date time. Sorry, it's early. You'd think we've done this before. I'm not going to go through every one of these. I'm going to point out some of them that I found were fascinating. There's obviously a bunch that can go to local time or UTC explicitly. And while we had some of those before, it wasn't throughout all of the day, year, month, hours, seconds that we really needed to make it clear. But if you look about 3 bullet items down and on, we now have some that make it easier to read for doing date comparisons. With your glide records, we have after, before, on or after, or on or before. So it looks more like what you'd get out of a condition builder. And you don't have to do the less than or equal. And there was some crazy JavaScript glide date time formatting stuff that was going on in there. This makes it much easier to do within a script and take that route. So check out these APIs on the docs site, and you will need to set on the developer site. Wow, totally missed that one. The developer site, and make sure that you set your version to Istanbul or these won't show up. We do have version specific documentation now as of Geneva. Next, I want to talk about search synonyms real quick. Let's suppose we have 2 knowledge base articles. One says how email works, and the other says how to set up Outlook. And without synonyms, anyone searching for email is only going to turn up the first one. They won't get anything about Outlook. So we've added a feature called synonym sets or synonym dictionary, synonym tables that can equate or relate terms to each other. And that way, when a user searches for email, they get both of these. That says, hey, if you're looking for email, I also want to get the Outlook related articles as well. You do need to turn this property on in Istanbul. It's available, but it's not on by default. And you need to set up these dictionaries per your terms. The way it works is once you create a new synonym set record, there is an embedded list in the form that looks similar to what you see on the right. And the format is if you've got an arrow in there made up of an equals and a greater than sign, the terms on the left are equivalent to the terms on the right, but not the other way around. It's a bit like saying all lions are a member of a cat family, but not all cats are a member of a lion family. That's my cheap analogy for the top one. And if you use commas, then all terms are considered equal, like email and Outlook were in the example. Only the published dictionaries, they start out as drafts, so you can build these things and then publish them later. And they do need to be associated with a table, like KB knowledge or incident. So you can have different terms in different places.
Yeah, I can imagine that would cause a problem if you were requesting something out of the catalog and it thought you were talking about something else. So you might not want it everywhere.
Yeah. Condition Builder has been upgraded in Istanbul. This is our friendly filter that we use on lists, and this is actually from the problems list where it says, hey, show me all the problems. You look, there's no conditions at the top, but now we have another section down below that says related list conditions. And I'm looking for any problems that have an active incident associated with them. Before, you would have had to do this with a database view. And trust me, they're not the most fun things to build. They are powerful, but for whatever reason, I spend more time than I need to build every single one of them, even if they're simple. And I have to go to the database view gods anytime I merge more than 2 tables. This is a shortcut around some of that functionality and can help you not only build a list view, but you can also build it into your sysparm query from the URL using the RL query and end RL query. So if you build this with a list, you still do the old right click, copy query. This is something you might see now if you're using the related list query. You can also add these to your condition fields in your own applications, which I will show you in just a moment by adding the attributes in the field dictionary entry, condition underscore builder equals v2, and optionally allow related list query equals true. So let me do a quick demo of that for you. Grab my laptop while remaining close to the microphone. Go back over here, and I have an application I just called Connie, short for Condition Builder. I don't know anyone named Connie. But here I've got a condition field in my application. I'm going to back that down just a little bit so we can read it. And I also have the show condition count up here. So as I click this refresh, it will update and say, this is how many records from this table. The table is user. So I'm looking at the sys user and saying, how many non-VIP users do I have that are active in the system? And it says there are 580. Now, my goal is to find out how many of those people have open or active incidents. Again, this isn't possible with the current condition builder. So what I'm going to do is good old-fashioned right-click, configure dictionary, and add those 2 attributes that I saw before. Scroll down to the attributes. And it was condition builder equals v2 and allow related list query equals true. I'm going to update that dictionary entry, and you'll see now, since I left the show condition count, that presents a preview button. If I didn't have that attribute in there, this would not be available. And I could still take the same number. You go, where'd your 580 go? Hit preview, and it will say 580 records match. This portion on the bottom, where it says related list conditions, is the second attribute that I put in. The version 2 is just this fancy new formatting and enables me to do this. You can't do related list conditions on the old condition builder. You have to set v2 to get the related list query, but you don't have to use related list query if you don't want to. So I'm going to go to the incident table, and it's going to show me all of the relationships with sysuser. Of course, there's assign to, because you use a sysuser table to assign things to people. I'm looking for the caller field. And I want to know, of those records related to this caller that I'm querying for. Show me where active is true. And I can add OR conditions and much more, but do a preview on that. And now I get, there are 12 active non-VIP users that have open incidents. That's a very powerful query that I can build into an application that I can then save to a list if I want and move on from there. So that's my demo. I love this feature. I've already used it in one of my applications that's Istanbul ready and having a lot of fun with it.
So just to be clear, Chuck, before we leave that,
sure.
So you have the definite. So you're defining the related list, and you're also able to pick which through which field it's related.
Yes.
So you could, for example, you could just by changing that, you could keep everything the same, but go through. You could do the same thing with, say, assigned to.
Yes.
By just changing that one field.
Right. How many users have open incidents assigned to them?
Correct. Yeah. So you're just
field. Yep.
Right. Yeah. So you're defining the relationship through from this to that via that one field. So that's that's one thing that I had actually missed in earlier things is that's how that works. That you're using that to pick the relationship.
And this is available in reporting. So now think about how much more powerful your reports can get. So very cool stuff. As far as mobile, I want to move this along because Dave's got really cool stuff at the end that I want to get to. This is a rock show, and he's got the best number at the end. So the mobile homepages are updated. You can now, you're not just stuck with the favorites that you could add a few visualizations. You can actually create mobile homepages with different buttons, applications, links, whatever you want to call them, on each home screen, and you can put those on into mobile themes. So you can theme these things. You can color the top, the bottom, make the fonts different color, configure the logo. Little more branding you can put on here. You cannot, however, change the icon on the native app when you see it on your mobile device and it says ServiceNow and it's got the ServiceNow logo. That doesn't change. That's a different thing that they're looking at. But this, once the app is up, you can make it your own, which is very handy. We provide mobile e-signatures. So now if you have a list of approvals, you can hit the approval and say, please enter your name and password. Well, that gets a little old if you got 4 or 5 of them to do. So we allow biometrics, which prevent your cat from approving things, as the image might indicate. It does require the e-signature plugin on the instance, so it will take advantage of that. And fortunately, it does work with multi-provider SSO to save you some time. We also have view rules, which work very much like the desktop implementation, where you can say this view is for this class of change request, so to speak, or this role for people. Very similar there. You can customize the lists and the forms, et cetera, just like the desktop. And whatever view rule applies to that person, role, group, data, however you define that, will pop up there. We've got Remember Me on the mobile web. I'm going to make sure we got these terms right. There's mobile web and there's native mobile app. Native mobile app is the one you install from the App Store. Mobile web is the one you go through your browser. The App Store one is not so critical because it uses a refresh token that stays a lot longer, so you don't have to log in every time you pull up an app. You know, kind of like Facebook. When you bring up Facebook, you're not prompted every time, unless something seriously out of whack, like my phone seems to think every couple of days. But that's neither here nor there. The mobile web allows you to do a Remember Me, so it does store that authentication cookie token, whatever it is, on your mobile device, so you don't have to log into the mobile web every time. We also have forgot password on both, which is very helpful if you need to do a password reset. We do have a consistent UI for both of these interfaces, making the mobile web experience very much like the native mobile app experience as well, with the favorites and the menus and all that good stuff that I already talked about. So much better experience. We've gotten rid of the old Dublin look and finally caught these two up. So the mobile team has been very hard because they know a lot of you are doing ServiceNow from your phones and tablets. So very good news there. I am now going to turn it over to Kreg, who will tell me all about this stuff and when to change slides.
All about this stuff. That's right. So Next slide, please. All right, so let's start off with the email API, and I tried to organize these in a fashion where it made a little sense as it flowed through. So let's see if it does. Email API. This will allow you as a ServiceNow user to be able to send emails through ServiceNow from a REST API. It works much like the table API that we have, and you call in. And like I said, you generate the message and then it'll go back out. Actually, I take that back. You should be crafting your email in a JSON format and then send it through REST API, and then it'll go out. You have to have the correct role to do this. There's an email send API role that you need, and you have to have ACL rights to the sys email table. Now, this doesn't work with any of the preferences or anything that you have for notifications in the system other than you sending it. And that's the only thing that it knows how to do.
Yeah. So if you use the email API and they say I'm not subscribed to that message, or it doesn't care. It's
Right.
just like opening up a direct connection to the email API and stuffing it in the queue and saying, here it goes. It doesn't
That's
check
right.
any of the other stuff.
And it may be good for doing something automated. I don't know where you would really want to craft all your emails through REST API. But anyway, it's there and it works pretty well. You have to, like I said, you have to generate the to CC, BCC, because you don't have access to all the fields. You could do lookups ahead of time and have your script or program, whatever, generate the code and then send it out.
Craig, there might be a use case for, say, an integration just reporting an anomalous condition, right? That would make sense for that.
And the email would come from the instance, not from
the
third-party integration, saving you the time to write some sort of SMTP integration on your third-party app. You could just focus on providing a service and a service alone. But if something happened, you could still trigger this email API to notify somebody. Good use case, Dave.
But and just keep in mind, you don't want your ServiceNow to become a mail relay. So you got to be a little bit careful with this in some ways.
Well, like you said, you have to have the correct roles and credentials to do this.
Right. That's right. I mean, you didn't want an external program just sending out a bunch of emails. Anyway, a couple of caveats. You don't get the unsubscribe and the email preferences, which I'll talk about in just a minute, from REST generated emails. And there's no attachment support. So if you need an attachment or something or some information in the email that's external to the body of the message, you may have to put a link in your body. So next slide, please. So that's where I mentioned email unsubscribe, which is really a nice feature. So in your email, in your template or in your email body or whatever, you can add the notif unsub macro and the notif prefs macro. These will generate links so that the user, when they get an email, if they go, I don't need this, they want to unsubscribe to it, they just click on it. It creates a new email and they hit send and they'll unsubscribe from the message feed. Maybe it's an incident and they're not the ones handling the incident. They could unsubscribe from it. Now, the unsubscribe is an unauthenticated link because it actually generates an email with a key and everything that goes back to ServiceNow, and it's only good for the one time. So you really don't have to be authenticated to ServiceNow to make that work. But the notif preferences you do. So when you click on that link will take you to ServiceNow, where if you're logged in, fine. If you're not, it'll ask for your credentials and take you to the notif. I keep wanting to say notif. The email preferences for yourself, and you can make changes as needed. So you just add those to the link bottom, and you can see the bottom of that template. Well,
didn't you say that there was also a way to put in some alternate text in here?
I was just going to that. If in the next screen,
Gotcha. Yep.
I was about to say something about it, but you can add some text to it, and where it says manage preferences, or you can put like click here to unsubscribe. Whatever text that you think is appropriate, you can put in there, rather than just being a random link, or not a random link, but it'll have our canned messages in there. So that takes us to the email layouts. This is our WYSIWYG editor for templates, email templates, which is great because all these messages go back and forth. You kind of have to craft them in the editor we've been using, but say that doesn't give you a template you can reuse throughout all your systems, all your messages, I should say. So if you had an incident, a problem, maybe you have a corporate standard you want it to look like for example, this one right here, it's all black with the ServiceNow logo. You can make one for problems, maybe it has like a red banner or something. I don't know, just a suggestion there for you. So you can use these across all your notifications, and you can apply them to, like I said, any notifications in the system, which is really nice.
I do need to clarify one thing, Craig, beside your typo of design.
Do what? Typo?
On the first one. This is email layouts apply to templates, not the notifications. So you
sorry, you're
apply
right.
a layout to a template and a template to a notification. So I don't know about your history, but my history of using templates has not been that extensive, but this certainly facilitates or necessitates the ability to use templates with notifications. So there is a bit of a hierarchy there with notifications, templates, and layouts applying to templates. They do not apply to notifications. I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I misspoke. So yes, that's the case. And of course, you get full HTML. You can get into the back end and edit the HTML if you want. One of the things that you have to be careful with HTML emails is you don't want to get too CSS heavy. You just want to kind of keep it generic HTML as best you can, because not all HTML readers handle that CSS part very well.
Yep.
You do have access to fields in the system, but again, you want to kind of keep this a little basic because this is an email. It's a layout template, so you want to make sure that it's generic enough for all your messages. Next slide, please.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now we're going to start talking about the API requester analytics, and this could be related to the first email API where I was talking about things coming in and things going out. So the API requester analytics is great because you get some data on what's incoming from into your ServiceNow instance, which is a great insight because sometimes you may not know all the times. Maybe this one system is hammering your system 100 times more than you expect it to. So you can turn on the analytics for any of the APIs that we have. Data is recorded automatically. It's recorded, I think, every minute. It starts collecting data, and all of it's stored for about 33 days. And that's out of the box. You can change that data as you need to. I don't know how much data you actually want to keep, or how often you're going to look at it, but you can change that from 33 days to whatever you need. And there's a month-over-month data as it's stored as things are cleared out from the 33 days. We keep that as well for historical reasons, and you can take a look at that. There is a whitelist, so you want to whitelist which APIs you want. And you don't want to do every one of them because I think it might tax your system a little bit too much if you just open it up, full bore. So yeah, you have to go in and be selective about the ones you want to look at. Now, if you look at the screenshot, there's a little filter. You can narrow down to which API you were looking at, or you can look at it as a whole, looking at the last 30 days there, and there's of course a API usage graph, and so there's some great dashboards, which we love dashboards, don't we, guys?
I love a good dashboard. Yes.
That's right. So I know in the earlier side we had REST message logging, but this is more of just it's more of HTTP in general, and that's why I changed it here. So we can not only keep information on all those REST calls coming in, but we can keep track of all this stuff going out. We can log all of the HTTP requests, which are REST, SOAP, or even the Glide HTTP client. And this is great, so you can kind of keep an eye on making sure your system's, I guess, one, for security, but also make sure it's your system's doing what it's supposed to be doing. You can set the log level globally through a system property. And you might want to be a little bit careful with that, again, because you don't want to tax your system too much trying to log things, because sometimes people leave log messages in code, and it gets a little ugly when you have too much log. Eats up all your space, and you know the drill. But you can also set a system property for the level of verbosity. You get all the information, just some basic or just some elevated information. And there is a blacklist to remove the domains you don't want. So if you turn it on globally, like I said, you can turn off like maybe the one system that we talked about a minute ago that is constantly sending information into ServiceNow and sending their stuff going back out. You can block all that. And to view the logs, you need the web_service admin role. Wanted to throw that in there so you knew what roles you needed to be able to see that. And I think that is it. Ta-da!
Yep. Good job.
All right. Thank you.
All right. And now let me
I got to turn it over to you.
let me
So
do the
stop
little
sharing.
magic to get my share up.
Yep.
And
I will lock it on your screen.
all right. And all right. And you guys should be seeing my screen.
Yep.
Yeah.
sure am.
Ensure that you have the avatars hidden.
And let me get that. Unfortunately, I went to PowerPoint slightly too early, and
I do that all the time.
and PowerPoint does some amazing things in scrambling your multi-monitor setup. All right, I'm going to hold on one second because PowerPoint has taken over. All right, and I don't see the. Hold on one second. I don't see the avatar hiding
that's
thing. So I think
okay.
all right, we'll go with what we got.
So keep
All right.
smiling, Chuck.
Yeah. or click that camera icon.
The
okay image that smiles.
That's
so
right.
as we said, I'm going to talk about a couple of features: the automated testing framework, very quickly run over a couple of the studio and source control changes, and then the big gun of this release from the development tools aspect is the JavaScript debugger, which is kind of, I always kind of jokingly refer to it as the return of an old friend, because we haven't had a debugger for a few releases, and what we have now is great. So first, we're going to talk about the automated testing framework. So what that does is, Google Hangouts, hold on one second. So what that does is it gives you the ability it gives us the beginning of the ability to create and run automated tests. Now, as we go through, it's not at the point right now where you can comprehensively top to bottom test everything. And I'll kind of talk a little about the limitations of this. But when you get an Istanbul instance, it comes with the automated testing framework, and it's got some pre-built test steps and some demo tests that show you how you can work with this and how you can kind of build your own tests. Test cases are composed of test steps, and test steps are can exist on either the client side or the server side. So on the server side, these might be a thing such as impersonate a given user. That's a very common one that you will see, because part of the whole aspect of the test is that you have to be running as a user. So you pick which user you're running at, and that would be a server side test step. You could also have a test step that is submit a form. Change a value and submit a form. That would be two different test steps. These test steps can be actions, like what I just said, changing a value, submitting a form, impersonating a user. They can also be assertions, which is check the value of a field, check the state of a field. And so either steps, actions, or assertions can result in a failure. So if you tried to do, say, a form submission and something about that was canceled, you would get a test failure. Or if you did your assertion and the values didn't match, that would be a test failure. And like any automated testing framework, these test failures will bubble up. So a failing test means a failing test. Failing test step means a failing test, which means a failing test suite. So you can also collect these tests. So you have test steps that form up into tests, and then you can aggregate your tests into test suites. Again, this is, if you've ever used any automated testing framework, this is very, these concepts are very familiar. You can configure your test suites such that you can have the whole test suite stop on the first failure that it encounters. And there's two different kind of big modes. One of which is you want to verify that you have no failure at all. This might be you're looking for the green light so that you can go ahead and do a release. More typically, in the middle of a development cycle, you want to know everything that's failing so that you can go and file bugs and address them. So depending on what the needs of this particular run of the test is, you may or may not want to see every test, or you may it may be a long-running, expensive test suite, and you would prefer to just stop and notify if you encounter any test, any failure of any test. You can have the ability to program a custom test step. So you have, I think there are 20 some that come out of the box, right? That are delivered with the initial release of this. As time goes forward, I know that the plan is that each release will have more and more. And so, for example, I think the plan going forward is that the individual applications will maybe have some semantically familiar test steps, which may be, submit an incident, so they would be kind of higher level, more abstract test steps. Right now, what we have are fairly literal to the workings of the system. And in order for the client side versions of these tests to be executed, you have a test runner page that is must be up and accepting connections. So you'll see actually that the debugger and the testing framework both work kind of similarly in the fact that when you open this page, you basically have a communication from that page back to the system saying, I'm the test runner page. Do you have some work for me to do? And so if there's a client side, a test has hit a client side step that it needs a test runner, it's going to wait for one of those things to pick it up. So you have to have one up and running before it will actually execute the test. What this implies too is that it is somewhat you have to be somewhat deliberate if you're going to do browser compatibility type testing, because you have to basically run this test suite over and over with each set of like browser and OS that you want to execute it. So if you're testing that it also works on Internet Explorer and Chrome and Firefox, then you'll need to rerun the test with one of those browsers picking it up. So it's not quite the same as, say, a Selenium grid where you can say, execute this same test 50 times with everything in this matrix. So it takes a little more work to do that from this testing framework. And so here's an example of that. I'm going to show you a demo in a moment, but this is kind of what the test runner looks like. You can see that the test runner is actually, it's got an iframe down at the bottom where you're looking at the actual page that's being loaded. So that execution frame is the test happening in real time. And as you watch it, as you watch the test runner work, you're going to see the values in there change and be very much like any kind of web driver type automated testing. You're actually watching something essentially is using client-side JavaScript to run your browser and execute the test for you. So at this point, I'm going to flip over and we'll actually show some of these things in action. So over here, and you guys tell me, is this the right side, magnification?
Yeah, font size looks good.
Okay, minimize your bar on the side.
All right. Let's do this. And
there we go.
Yeah, you can click the little icon on the lower right.
Lower left. Roam around the.
Oh, yeah. Gotcha. So actually, so let me show you. So I'm going to show you. So if you see over here, automated test framework, and you can see these are the things that I was talking about. We've got tests. They roll up into. These are the tests that come out of the box. So on this system, I have only created, I think, a single one. The rest of these are like the open form to a view, basic UI test. These are the ones that you will see. If we look at any one of these, let's pick one. Pick one that is fairly simple. As I said before, this is they're sorted in execution order. So this is the test in the order that it's going to run. It's going to first impersonate, then it's going to open a new form. You see, open the ITIL view of a user form. It's going to validate the fields. Validate some fields. These are the assertions I talked about. It's now going to set some fields and it's going to resubmit it. So this is the test, right? So so that is kind of how that works. And then if you look over here, the suites are again composed of this, and it's got some built-in with some failing test suites, some suites that contain a failing test. It's got some that that will and won't. a suite that, as I said before, this is one that's configured to stop on first failure. So let's go ahead and let's run this test suite. And so we'll actually see at this point it's running. Now you see how it's saying waiting for our browser to pick up this test. At this point, I'm going to click this and we will open the UI test runner. And you see that it is now in fact doing that. And if you watch, you can kind of see down here that is in fact doing, it's basically running that UI. And so it's running, and we are going to see a failure here in a moment because that's, so if we go back over, and now I'm going to need to switch back over here. You'll see this is what it looks like. We see that it was running. We see that that we have failing tests, and this is what happened. So the test failed, an assertion failed inside it, and it was executing this test. So now we have a test suite that it stopped when it failed. This right here, you'll see that this test never happened, right? Because it was set to stop on first failure. So this is kind of what it looks like. This is how you see this, in action.
That's awesome. By the way, I love the filler.
Right, and so this is, like I said before, there are limitations to this. This is, you cannot do at this time. You can't do an entire full. Complete integration test, acceptance test with this testing framework. What you can do is begin to strap tests around it and begin to get an automated verification. One of the big use cases for this is that it is expensive to validate that an upgrade, a version upgrade in ServiceNow, like everything that you have configured and everything that you have built in a custom app, that it works from version to version. And so this is actually one of the big reasons for building this, is to actually reduce the cost of upgrading, to make it easier for people to do that.
Yeah.
So let me this is a quick look at the built-in step, those test steps that I talked about. These are the test step configs. So these are kind of some of the basic operations that you have available to you, before, as you see, you have a new button, you can code your own if you need to.
We may do a specific episode just on this. I think it's worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. And to mention too, the live coding happy hour this Friday, for those who are looking, well, if you're looking at the replay on YouTube, you probably won't, this will be in the past, although it's still available, is where Josh Nereus and I are just going to get on the thing and build test steps. We'll build tests for an hour and then run them. We're just going to take probably Do Now or Travel Tracker or both and just start building test steps for projects we already have.
The test results include screenshots. So if you're sitting there watching and going, oh, I see what happened, or oh, that mandatory field isn't filled out, that's what stopped it.
Yeah.
You can see the screenshots at the various steps of what's going on in the test results. That's one of my favorite features.
That is awesome. That is fantastic.
Yeah, as you see here, you have basically the history of the test results. And so we see like the tests that have been run before. And so just like Chuck was saying, let's go back to this. And this is so this is the log of that, and here is the screenshot of that. And so you can click that and it will download it, and you can look at exactly, as he said, the state at that point. So there's a lot to talk about that, but I'm going to move on just because, as he said, we could do an entire episode, and we may very well do an episode on that. Just in the future, and honestly, to be completely open about it, there's so much more. I just need more time. I need more time with it. This, I need a little more runtime, driving the test framework around a little bit. And let me get out of that. And I'm having a hard time getting back to PowerPoint. I think my full screen.
If you're in full screen, you can just use the swipe left and right.
All right, PowerPoint. There's a reason why I don't like to use PowerPoint. I like to use Reveal from Node.js.
Especially with dual displays. It gets a little
oh my goodness. Dual displays and Google Hangout at the same time. So I'm going to very quickly run over this. There are a few studio and source control changes. They are not as mind-blowing this time as they have been in times past. You notice, like every release, there's kind of a focus that really, that really moves the ball down the field. This time, the previous 2 versions had a lot of Studio, like the introduction of Studio, and then a lot of new features. It's been it's a little calmer this time. So one of the simple changes that actually does make my life better, I think, is that Studio now exists in a tab. It's not forced to be this free-floating top-level window, which is before the only way that Studio would exist. So now when you open Studio, it'll actually open in a tab, and I prefer that.
There is a property or a preference or something that you can set it back if you did become accustomed to the old way. I don't have that offhand, but we'll find that.
Yeah, if for some reason you needed that, you could, but I actually like it better this way myself.
Me too.
Yeah, the source control integration now has a commit history that shows the actual files in each commit. So you have a little bit more information than you had before, where it was kind of a black box per each commit. The script debugger, which I'm going to show in just a moment, can be launched from the Studio. And you can create some service portal records. So previous release in Helsinki, Service Portal was released for the first time. It had 0 overlap with Studio, which is a little bit of a drag in the fact that you've got this new neat thing, but you have to leave the Studio environment to go and develop for it. So now we have the beginnings of integration. Again, it's not comprehensive. So the widget editor, and the page editor are not integrated with Studio at this time. But you can go and you can edit the theme records, the include records, the widget dependencies. So you can begin to work with Service Portal. And I make no forward-looking statements, but I can only assume that in future releases that integration will grow greater and greater. All right, so let's talk about Debugger 2.0. I call it Debugger 2.0, which is not the ServiceNow terminology, just to differentiate it from the debugger that we had, Fuji era and before. I always forget when it came out. Geneva, I think, was the first release without it. I can't remember if it was in Fuji or not.
I think it was Eureka Fuji, and then it went away in Geneva.
Right.
I forgot about it.
Yeah, the previous debugger sort of kind of worked, and that's one of the reasons why it was pulled out, because it didn't work often enough that it was kind of unpredictable what it would do. So it was slightly better than nothing, but at times maybe very marginally better than nothing. And PowerPoint. Oh, great.
Java update.
See, you shouldn't have badmouthed PowerPoint earlier.
My Z order has gone completely nuts. All right. So so Debugger 2.0, this has nothing in common. It is a complete rewrite from the ground up. It is available in almost all scripting elements, and we'll see this in a minute. If you were looking at the new rich editor that came in Helsinki, that's got the code that's got the line numbers along the left. That line number is actually the user interface for breakpoints. If you see that line number, you can click that, and that will become a breakpoint. And I'll demo that.
Woohoo!
So the one thing that you really notably you can't debug because it doesn't have the rich script editor is a scripts background. So these breakpoints that you're setting, worth noting that especially if you're on a development environment with multiple developers, breakpoints that you set are per user. So if I set a breakpoint, you will not break on that breakpoint. Everything about the debugging and the breakpoints and all that is per logged in user session. So in order for code to be broken, stopped and caught in the debugger, there are a few things that all have to be happening, which is you have to have a breakpoint set in a user session. The functionality that's being broken, like that scripting, has to be synchronous, and it has to be executing in the same interactive session as the user with the breakpoint. On top of that, you need, just like before where we had to have the test runner open and accepting connections, you need the JavaScript debugger open and accepting connections. So you can have many breakpoints defined, and if you don't have the debugger open, it will pass right through them. So you actually have some pretty good control over that, where you may you don't want to necessarily have to clear all your breakpoints, but for a little while you don't want to be debugging. You don't want to be breaking on them. You just want to sail through for a little while. You can just control that by opening and closing that window. So that's actually quite nice to be able to do that. As I said before, you can't step through asynchronous code, which kind of makes sense, right? Because everything about this is interactive session based. So you cannot, for example, step through You can't step through an inbound email action. You can't step through a scheduled job. You can't step through an asynchronous business rule. You cannot step through a scripted REST API that's happening via the actual integration. You can do it if you're executing that scripted REST API via API Explorer, because the user that is, the user session that is executing that code is actually your user session. It's got your breakpoints and all that stuff. So this is kind of what it looks like. This is what the debugger looks like, where you've got this nice pane view, where you've got a lot of information on the left side, your call stack. You've got the transaction detail is actually the HTTP transaction that invoked the code that's being debugged. In your center view, you've got the code, the actual code itself, and like it operates just like any debugger you're familiar with in the past. And then on the right is your variable inspector. And for a lot of these, you cannot necessarily look at every single, you can't expand every single type. It's going to be very similar to like when you're logging, whether it says object or, there are going to be some that you can't expand. But for example, glide record, you absolutely can. And it's a very common situation that you're going to want to look and see the value of a specific glide record. And so,
I love being able to see that whole view on the side of all your values, because that makes a huge difference. Because sometimes, and we talked about this before, coding something and there's an object there, but it's kind of almost like looking over the throwing something over the fence and hope you get back exactly what you wanted.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is what I was talking about before. Is if you see this, you'll notice that I'm hoping that this goes through the share. Sometimes, like with a projector, you can't quite tell what what you're seeing, but you'll notice as you hover over, you see that kind of that it changes color of those line numbers. That's basically showing you what would be the line you would break on if you clicked it. And you can add and remove breakpoints by clicking if they're click. Why is that not? I don't know. So we've got a breakpoint defined here at line 4. I'm going to go ahead and we'll go and come over to here. I'm going to go straight to this because we're kind of running a little low on time. I'm going to go straight to launching script debugger. So we'll have that open. And there is the debugger. Let me expand this so we can see it a little bit. You notice that
glory.
Yeah. So you notice that this is what we were looking at before. This is now like actually every breakpoint that I have defined on the instance that I'm looking at. We note too that these kind of cut across scopes. I'm not just looking at the scope I'm in now. These are across multiple scopes that I have multiple different applications running. And so right now it's accepting connections. You see that the status is waiting for first breakpoint. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to go in here and execute some code. I'm just going to change that. And you notice actually I got this Chrome notification that the transaction is paused at breakpoint. Let's go over to my script debugger. And we are now broken at that point. And you'll notice that we've got current. And because of the state of this, we see, you get current. I believe previous is also in scope here, because it's a business rule. So you can examine. You'll see a lot of the stuff so you'll note too that you get sys IDs, not display fields, things like that. But now one of the nice things is that this code is actually calling into a script include. If I do, and you have your very familiar operators, your step over, your step into, your step out of, pause, resume. So resume will just keep going until next breakpoint. If I do a step into at this point, it is actually stepping into my script include. And so you don't actually have to have the breakpoints, although I had some breakpoints defined in that, you don't have to have them defined everywhere. It will actually, you can step into any code that is available to be debugged. And so this is JavaScript code like running in your JavaScript interpreter. Sometimes you'll get to a point where it's actually going down into the Java code of the application server, and that's kind of the edge of what you can debug at some point. Like typically like calling a system API, you're going to get to a point where you can step in no further. But here, for example, if you look over here, we've got this, we'll step 1. So we're still in the initialization. We're calling the debug me now. And so we're actually in the function. We got gr this, gr is undefined. And I go over it, and now GR is defined, and now we're going to see like that empty glide record, that has not been called. Step over one more time, did the query, et cetera, et cetera. Let me step out of that, and we're back here, and now you see the glide record has been defined. We have done the query. We've done the query, right? So interestingly, it's like a filled out. It knows it is incident, but it's not filled up yet, because why is it not filled up?
Why is it next?
Haven't done the next, exactly. And so we do the next, and then you'll see that now it has the values. And so for somebody who, like me, who is a little bit of a plodder in coding, I actually it helps me to kind of walk through the logic, real time, the actual executing logic. So for me, like having this, which is a much more bulletproof debugger than what we had available before, more functional, it is reliable in a way that the previous version was not. So I love this debugger. This is, to me,
one thing I noted, Dave, when you were doing the query, is it also stepped into the before query business rule. So it's allowing you to step into business rules that are executing against the conditions that you found, which I think is absolutely amazing, because you often miss those things. I see a lot of comments in the community that say, why am I not seeing these records? And it's either ACLs or some sort of query business rule. This helps expose that in a debugger.
Yeah, if you think about, like, one of the ways we talk about, one of the reasons why we use the IIFE style, and we want to wrap your code in functions, is to prevent scope clobber. And if you think about it, you've got that kind of logical unrolling of all the JavaScript code that's happening. It's as if it was happening in one long, function. And if you stepped into everything that you do, you're actually you could walk through the entirety of that logic path, wherever it went. It could be a business rule that calls a script include, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you can actually look at every line that happens, every debuggable line that happens from the beginning to the end of that transaction, if you so desire. So it is a very powerful tool.
My favorite.
Yes, this is, every kind of, it's kind of the nature of these releases is that you have a thing that's kind of the, the killer feature. I think really Service Portal was kind of that for Helsinki, and I think the debugger is kind of that for Istanbul. So with that, let us go to our takeaways. The debugger is back, as we said, kind of the big gun of this release. You've got the automated test framework, which again is not a 100% comprehensive solution, but it's the beginnings of something that you can begin investing in. In some ways, there are other, we have third-party tools, third-party providers and partners that do other things. It might serve as a sales funnel for those kind of things, proving the concept to you if you're not on board. I think most of the modern world is on board with automated testing. And as Chuck demonstrated, we've got the improved mobile experience and lots more stuff. I mean, we have 3 takeaways, but there's a lot in here. So Istanbul, thumbs up.
Email, come on.
The API, I think the API logging, is one of those ones that, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to advance it to the email. And but like the API logging is one of those ones I think that as developers we may not, it's not a thing we're going to think about a lot, like the API aggregate data, but in an actual production system, that may be one of the most valuable ones, because if your system begins getting slow, you might realize, oh my gosh, this integration is drawing so much more resource than we really intended.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. And with that, here's some of our standard reference information. I'm doing all the talking, I guess, because I feel like I've got the slide, but
keep going.
Keep going.
There you go.
Got the slide.
The wiki, you've got the docs site, you've got the Now Support YouTube page, my favorite, developer.servicenow.com. And again, as Chuck pointed out, the bit.ly link, servicenow-technow, will take you to the episode list. You can find this and all episodes from there. And follow us on the community, TechNow@servicenow.com, if you have any feedback, at ServiceNow or ServiceNow support. And as we said before, the YouTube channel.
Oh, I should update that. We're actually going through the Now community channel now.
All right, there you go. All right, thank you, everybody.
We'll give the closing sign off here. Unlock it from Dave's screen. Put our cameras back on.
That's right.
Give the smile.
We want to leave you with a good impression.
Smile and wave, boys. Thank you very much for watching, and we look forward to talking to you again on the next episode. Until then, take care. See you on the community. Go build something cool and let us know about it.
That's right.
Bye.
All right. Bye, everybody.